The penultimate race of the 1989 season at Suzuka saw Alessandro Nannini score his sole F1 victory. As Benetton's team leader, alongside a young Johnny Herbert, he was running in third at the Japanese Grand Prix when the two McLarens of Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost ahead of him collided, giving Nannini the lead.
This is the opportunity that Senna's looking for, and he's going through. Ouch! Oh my goodness, this is fantastic. They beat. This is what we were fearing might happen during the race.
Prost retired, whereas Senna, who had to win to stand any hope of defeating Prost in the title race, rejoined after replacing his front wing. He hunted Nannini down, eventually passing the Italian and crossing the finish line first.
Nannini, just behind Ayrton Senna, in a magnificent finish, takes his highest ever place.
However, Senna was subsequently disqualified for rejoining the circuit via the escape road after his clash with Prost, which handed Nannini his one and only Formula One win.
Not very happy for Senna, but I'm happy for me. It's okay for that.
The charming Italian would have surely taken more victories had it not been for a devastating helicopter crash a year later, which severed his arm and ended his F1 career. If you only ever win one Grand Prix, then make it your home Grand Prix. That's what Carlos Pace did in 1975. The speedy Brazilian rarely had luck on his side during his all-too-brief F1 career, but on one sweltering afternoon at Interlagos, fortune fell his way. There were just 8 laps left when longtime leader Jean-Pierre Jarryer's shadow suffered a fuel metering failure, allowing Brabham driver Pace to sweep through to victory. The Sao Paulo crowd went wild as home hero Pace led Emerson Fittipaldi home for a Brazilian 1-2. Tragically, Pace was killed in an aircraft accident 2 years later, aged just 32. The Interlagos track would later be renamed the Autodromo José Carlos Pace in his honour. Jarno Trulli had to wait 119 Grand Prix for his first F1 victory. A master qualifier who could never quite convert in the race, the affable Italian broke his duck in fine style, winning from pole position on the legendary streets of Monte Carlo in 2004.
Trulli comes out of Anthony Noakes. He's going to see the man with the checkered flag, and Jarno Trulli is going to win his first ever Formula One Grand Prix. There is the checkered flag.
But it would prove to be a once-in-a-lifetime occasion. After falling out with Renault boss Flavio Briatore, he departed for Toyota, capturing 2 more poles and 7 podiums, but no wins. A former Grand Prix motorcycle racer, Jean-Pierre Beltoise entered 88 Formula One races between 1967 and 74, recording a single but memorable win on a cold, wet and heavily modified Monte Carlo circuit in 1972. Emerson Fittipaldi had pole, but it was Beltoise in his BRM who surged into the lead at the start from 4th, guaranteeing himself the only view of the track that was free from spray. He had a couple of scares as he held off his rivals, losing the back end briefly at Portier and barging into the lapped Australian Tim Schenken at the hairpin.
He was on my way. It was impossible to overtake, you see. So that was the only way to overtake him. To touch him.
You pushed him over to the side.
Yes.
Beltoise led for every one of the race's 80 laps, holding off wet weather expert Jackie Ickx to take the win and secure the last F1 victory for BRM. Beltoise never won again in F1. He retired from the class at the end of the 1974 season, later becoming French national champion in both touring cars and rallycross, and a class winner at Le Mans. Pastor Maldonado's knack for getting involved in trouble often overshadowed his formidable turn of speed. But when things came together for the Venezuelan, as they did at the 2012 Spanish Grand Prix, he proved a class act. Promoted to pole position in Barcelona when Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes was excluded from qualifying, Maldonado drove with great composure. Although he was beaten to the first corner by home favourite Fernando Alonso, an undercut at the first round of pit stops gave him a chance to reclaim the lead.
You can see the Williams powering down the main straight. Alonso can only do 100 kilometers an hour. Past to Maldonado, who just sets the fastest lap of the race. The Williams is in front of the Ferrari.
He was absolutely flawless, delivering the unfancied Williams team their first victory in 8 years.
A new winner in Formula One. It's past to Maldonado and a Williams team that are back on top. And boy, are we glad to see it.
Very good job, guys. Very good job.
But as quickly as his race-winning form arrived, it evaporated once more. In the 71 races following his victory, Maldonado only made it back into the top 5 once. Legendary F1 team boss Ken Tyrrell famously thought so much of Gunnar NILSSON that he tipped him as a future world champion. He only sat in a racing car for the first time in 1973, yet within 4 years he was a winner in Formula One. Indeed, his sole victory at the 1977 Belgian Grand Prix was something of a classic. Driving for Colin Chapman's Lotus, the super-smooth Swedish driver carved his way through the field at Zolder in a wet, then dry race, before passing Ferrari's Niki Lauda for the lead in the closing stages. In only his 22nd F1 entry, NILSSON had achieved top spot. But just as the gregarious Swede's career seemed to be gaining real momentum, tragedy struck when he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And just 16 months after his victory, he passed away, aged just 29. Under normal circumstances, Olivier Panis might never have become an F1 race winner. But the 1996 Monaco Grand Prix was not a normal race. It is still the Grand Prix with the highest attrition rate in F1 history. Only 3 cars reached the checkered flag as Panis watched some of the great and good of the sport falter on the twisting streets of Monte Carlo.
Already the arrows is out, and that is Jos Verstappen. We're down to 20 cars, and that's Schumacher. Michael Schumacher is out of the Monaco Grand Prix before the first lap has even been completed. Damon Hill out of the Monaco Grand Prix. He was destined not to win this race.
What is going on? Alesi has a problem.
And is retiring from the Monaco Grand Prix. That's Irvine and Salo and Hakkinen. Oh my goodness! And I think we're only going to have about 4 cars finish the Monaco Grand Prix.
Panis, who'd started 14th, made some gutsy overtakes and switched to slicks in a well-timed pit stop, and was the last man standing in this fairy tale victory.
Olivier Panis exits the Rascasse to win the 1996 Monaco Grand Prix, an incredible result.
Despite a further 8 seasons in Formula One, driving for Prost, BAR and Toyota, Panis never won again. When Jean Alesi burst onto the F1 scene with Tyrrell in 1989, he seemed destined for greatness. After finishing 4th in his first Grand Prix, the Frenchman went toe-to-toe with Ayrton Senna for the lead at the US Grand Prix in 1990. But a combination of bad choices, bad machinery and bad luck kept Alesi off the top spot for all but one magical afternoon in 1995, on his 31st birthday, when fortune favoured him briefly. Running a distant second to Michael Schumacher at the Canadian Grand Prix, another runners-up spot was beckoning for his Ferrari. But when the German's Benetton developed gearbox problems 11 laps from home, Alesi was in Wonderland.
Jean Alesi wins the Canadian Grand Prix to euphoric applause all the way round. Everyone will be delighted.
Running out of fuel on his victory lap, Schumacher gave the birthday boy a lift home to the pits in what are now iconic scenes of rapture. Another 16 podiums and a handful of near misses followed for Alesi before he bowed out of F1 in 2001. 1971 was a year dominated by Britain's Jackie Stewart, who stormed to the championship with 3 races to spare in his Tyrrell. But it was his young teammate Francois Cevert who stole the show at the last round, the US Grand Prix. Starting 5th, Cevert was soon up to 2nd behind Stewart, who'd taken the lead at the end of lap 1. But in the unseasonably hot conditions in New York State, Stewart's tyres were going off fast, and he knew he couldn't hold him off for long. He passed Stewart on lap 14 and survived assaults from Jackie Ickx, Jo Siffert and Ronnie Peterson to take the checkered flag for his one and only F1 win, and the first for a French driver since Maurice Trintignant triumphed at Monaco in 1958. Tragedy would strike when Cevert returned to Watkins Glen in 1973, when he was killed in a qualifying crash at just 29 years of age. Robert Kubica suffered one of the most shocking crashes of recent years at the 2007 Canadian Grand Prix. He emerged relatively unscathed, but the Polish driver could have been forgiven for some apprehension on his return to Montreal a year later. But he needn't have worried.
I remember first day when I did track walk. It was strange, but strange from perspective that I saw it for the first time again. You knew you have a massive crash there. I have to admit, I look at it. I don't remember what I was thinking, but once I was in the car, I didn't felt any emotions there.
Kubica took advantage of some high-profile retirements to put himself in contention, most notably Lewis Hamilton and Kimi Raikkonen's pit lane collision that ended both their races. Soon, Kubica's aggressive two-stop strategy helped him get the better of his BMW Sauber teammate Nick Heidfeld and eventually take the win.
Robert, bravo, bravissimo, bravissimo. That's an historical win, Robert.
Thank you.
That the talented Pole never won again was largely down to a lack of front-running machinery, something he surely would have had access to had his F1 career not been derailed by the injuries he sustained whilst rallying in 2011. Although he made a momentous return to F1 in 2019, he never again hit the heights of that incredible day in Montreal.